Heat, 981fm.com, and iHeartStation.
Nancia, Smokehouse, it's the urban heat. Shout out to Coach La.
Coach LA, it's time to listen to conversations that's gonna keep you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. on the urban heat, just calling. Conversations with Coach La 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 with Coach La 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 La. If you got something on your mind, you can call in, you can hit a line. She the realest, ooh, she the realest. You can tap in, loud, always get a business to empower you so that you can do every and anything that you want to. Kicking it with Coach LA, it's time to listen to conversations that's gonna keep you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. on the urban heat, just calling. Conversations with Coach La 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 with Coach La 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 La.
Good evening, and good evening to all of the beautiful people out there in the land. You are tuned in to another episode of Conversations with Coach La, live on Urban Heat. Yes, it is one of those wonderful moments where I realize I am doing a lot. And not only am I doing a lot, but I'm tired, y'all. And I was saying to myself, I said, you know what? You know what you need to do? Maybe you need to take a vacation, right? Maybe that's what you need to do. You need to take a nice little vacation and take a little self-care breaks. I think I'm going to probably do that soon. Maybe for my birthday. My birthday's coming up in July, so I'm excited about that. But tonight's conversation is really geared to the entrepreneurs. You know, I've been talking about entrepreneurship, talking about mental health over these last few episodes. And that trend I'm going to keep going, especially as I'm realizing all of the things that I do. And people continue to say, you know what, Coach, you do a lot. And I'm like, I'm doing everything that I love to do. But yeah, I think it's time for me to probably take a little break, you know? So I think I'm going to do that. But before I do, I got a few more episodes that I need to do and a few more events too that are going to be coming up. So you guys know you're tuned into the Urban Heat 98.1 FM, and we are radio with a purpose. So what are we talking about tonight? Well, I have a wonderful lady that I have had the opportunity to meet virtually who does executive coaching and consulting. And the reason why her conversation tonight is going to be so pivotal is that a lot of you listeners, I know for a fact, want to take that leap, that jump, or just you want to move up in your career if you don't want to start a business, but you're trying to figure out how to navigate life and navigate careers at the same time. And I think sometimes there's a delicate balance that occurs when you're trying to do both. So what can I tell you about Miss Wilson? I'm going to bring her on in just a second, but she is an internationally certified coach and the CEO of Exceeding the Mark Executive Coaching and Consultant. She has a very unique story. I don't want to give it all away because I want her to tell you a little bit more about who she is and why she does what she does. So I'm going to bring the wonderful Mrs. Dr. Bonnie Wilson on to Conversations with Coach La, and she is looking lovely. How are you this evening?
I am good.
Well, you look lovely.
Thank you. I laughed that you knew to say Mrs. Wilson. So can I run upstairs and tell my husband she said it right?
I said it right because I'm always saying to myself, Miss. But there's a lot of married folks. A lot of people married, you know?
Yeah, I'm one of those happily married.
They're doing very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
All of it. So tell me, who is Bonnie Wilson?
Well, good question. So I'm married, happily married. I always say to the man of my dreams. Took me a while to find him. Had to practice a couple times, but I got it right this time.
Wait,
Um,
how many times did you practice?
3.
Ooh.
Yes, 3 times. My son likes to whisper to my mother when she says, "Is that Mark?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, that's Mark." And she'll go, "I know him." And Jamal says, "He's number 3."
No,
And
he
she
does not.
goes, "Yes, he does." And she has dementia. And he thinks he is so funny. I'm like, "Back it up, bro. Back it up."
Tell him to get out your business.
I've tried. Yeah.
They get out my business. Don't worry about how many times I didn't got married. Just be happy that I'm happy.
I have it right. 15 years we've been together now, and he
Oh,
is so handsome, and he's wonderful. He's absolutely wonderful.
and you
Supportive.
said he's your dream guy.
Yep, he is. He's so supportive of me and part of how I can be successful doing these things that I do. But in the meantime, we have 4 grown children. We have 4 grandchildren, 3 of who live with us. They're so adorable except when they're not. So they're 7 months, 19 months, and 5 years old. And then our 13-year-old lives in Pennsylvania. So
Oh wow. Okay. So you
mhm,
have a full, as I like to call it, a full and juicy life.
yes, we'll call it that for now.
Yes. For now. For now. Now tell me, where are you located? Because you're not you're virtual today. So for everybody that's listening, we have her. She's not here in Massachusetts with me, but where are you?
I'm in Illinois, outside of Chicago. So if you've heard of Naperville or Aurora, that's where I live, right outside of Naperville, Aurora, in Sugar Grove, a little place that not very many people have heard of.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Hmm.
Wow.
Hmm.
Wow. Wow. Because I see your beautiful background. It
Yeah,
seems like that is a real black background. That's not a virtual one, right?
it's a real one. Yeah, that's our sunroom
Yeah.
it has floor to ceiling windows, and I have a plant fanatic, so I got a bunch of plants back there and
Mhm.
growing some garden stuff and candles. Hmm.
Gotcha. Now, when we got a chance to talk before um you came on the show, and you told me a lot about your background and some of the things that you had gone through to get to where you are now in life.
Hmm.
And I know you when I was looking at your Instagram page, you share a lot of really good tips for
Hmm.
entrepreneurs and leaders on how to become better leaders. Tell
Hmm.
me, how did you fall upon getting into this field of leadership and executive coaching?
So I fell upon the leadership part. So that part wasn't exactly an accident, the leadership, because I'm the oldest of 3 girls. And I always have to tell my sisters I'm still the boss of them. They
Mhm.
still say no, but the fact remains. Anyway, so I was a nurse as a young nurse, but the thing that got me to being a leader was this was way back in the years when you were a nurse and you were an assistant head nurse. And Coach Law, you're probably too young to know that. And then you were a head nurse.
I remember some of this stuff. I'm not that young. I know I look young, but I got some years on me. I got some years.
So I was an assistant head nurse, and the head nurse was going to resign because she wasn't going to get her bachelor's degree. And she was like in her 40s or 50s then. And, something none of us think about now, we just go get it. And so she asked all of the assistant head nurses who's interested. I'm like the little kid cleaning the blackboards at school. I'm like, I will. Well, that was a conversation on Thursday. I said yes on Friday. When I came back on Monday, I was the head nurse. And about that Thursday began the budget, and she was gone. I have never cried so hard in my life with that quick transition.
So, how did you manage that?
A lot of tears or a lot of weeping and gnashing of teeth. I was raised in church, so that those kind of things come to my mind. But I did. I went to the bathroom every time they'd say something. So like an FTE, a full-time equivalent. I go to the bathroom. I was like, oh God, I don't know what that is, and come back. So I cried the entire budget season. And that's part of what has set me up for what I've said for leaders. I will never watch and have somebody do that again,
Mm.
because that was such a traumatic time of trying to learn how to be a leader when I knew nothing about leadership other than I think I did some evaluations and I did some time cards, but I didn't know anything that I was doing. And to drop me and leave me as a leader and in the middle of budget season, I don't think she meant anything bad about it. I don't think she was trying to like get back at me or anything. But many times we don't think about what leaders need to be successful.
I
It
think
was,
that's a valid point. I think a lot of people feel like leaders are born, What's your take on that? Do you feel like a leader is born, or you feel like they're created and that they're developed?
Yes and yes. So
Yes and yes.
yes and
Okay,
yes.
break this down, because when I was in school, my professor, when I was getting my MBA, she really strongly believed that they were not born. That
Mhm.
that was not something that you were born into. You just didn't come out that way.
So I think, are you oldest, middle,
I'm the
only?
oldest.
Okay, are you bossy around your siblings?
I don't know. They might say so.
Yeah, okay. So I think we're born with some of those leadership qualities, but I don't think you can just pop out and be a good leader. So
Right.
I know I was born with some of those leadership qualities. I think my father really pushed some of that. You know, with that saying you probably heard, where he would ask me about my best friend, if she jumps off a roof, are you going to jump?
Right.
And so I think some of the leadership things are either pushed by our parents, encouraged by our parents, and then we come out sometimes having some leadership qualities. But I think I know they have to be made, because you don't know all those things, like how to have a conversation, how to do a budget, how to work with other leaders, how do you move up in the system. So yes, I think you can have leadership qualities that you're born with. I've been leading all my life, but I don't think I was a good leader until I got some leadership training and got some coaching for myself.
That's a valid point. I think when you talk about leadership qualities, I'm thinking about being talkative, for
Mhm,
instance. Being able to some children like to take initiative and
mhm,
try things and do things on their own. No, 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 let me do it. Let me do it. I'm assuming those are the type of things you're
mhm,
talking about that can be cultivated into a
mhm,
leader. But those are like natural curiosity versus someone who's maybe a little bit shy or a little bit more timid and doesn't want to sort of go out there and
mhm.
try things. Um,
Definitely.
but it's interesting because temperament is not talked about a lot, right? Like,
Mhm,
that's a lot about temperament. Like, there's colicky babies. Some babies just naturally are just very bubbly and they come out laughing and giggling, and other babies
mhm,
crying all the time.
mhm,
So I do think there's a level of truth that your temperament and some of your natural skills and talents that I think you're born
mhm.
with um can go one or two ways depending on how you're nurtured.
Right,
You
right.
know, again, y'all got remember I am a therapist here, right? So we got to talk a little bit about that nature versus nurture. But sometimes people feel like if they didn't have certain skills, then they're not destined to be leaders, or they won't be a good leader. What do you think about that?
I don't think that's true. I think you have to be willing to learn.
Mm,
So, one of the things I noticed about myself early on is, yes, I was bossy. Yes, I was good at managing people, but I
mhm,
wasn't such a good leader. And my one of the things that would challenge me all the time, my parents I think figured it out, is if you tell me I can't do something, oh, you're not going to be able to do that, then something in my brain snaps, and I'm like, oh, it's on. I'm going to be able to do that. Oh, you shouldn't be in nursing school because, that's going to take up all your time. You're going to work night shift. What did you say I shouldn't? Oh, it's on. So with some of that innate,
mm,
yes. But one
yeah,
of the bad qualities I had, my sisters would do what I tell them to. Well, kind of, because I just said it because I was the boss.
mm,
But I tried that as a leader. That did not work. And
mm,
one of the people that called me on it was another manager, actually was another director. She gave me some feedback. She said, Bonnie thinks just because she said it, it'll be done.
mm.
And that's not true. If you don't know how to follow up, how to have hard conversations, and you can't just tell people what to do, ask anybody in my house. Nope, nope, nope.
It's interesting that you talk about that, because I think for the longest time, I probably resented being the oldest and
Mhm,
being sort of pressed, pushed, encouraged to sort of be the person
mhm,
telling my siblings what to do. I don't think I naturally wanted to boss them around. I feel like I was
mhm,
trained to do that,
that's
be
right.
to be
Mhm,
that way. So that's why I go back to, do you think that people are cultivated to do that? Because I was constantly told, you're the oldest, you're the leader, they're going to follow you. You have
mhm.
to role model the right behavior. So that was like really drilled into me at an early age that I had to be a leader because I was the oldest.
Well, I'm trying to think if I don't know if my parents drilled into me to be a leader, but they drilled into me the what integrity and the right and wrong things.
Mm,
I think you can try to push somebody to be a leader and they're not necessarily going to do that. So one of my kids is very much well, they're not a kid. You know, people come to him wanting to talk to him about all kinds of things, and we can push him all we want into being
mhm.
that person that everybody tells him he should be. But if he doesn't want to do it, he doesn't want to do it. So you have to be the oldest because that's how you were born. My parents pushed me to be a leader, but I think some of it I wanted it for myself. I wanted I wouldn't say I wanted to boss people around, but it's kind of a joke in our house that I say I'm the boss of everybody, and they just all roll their eyes and nana mom whatever. But I think I was born to be a leader, and I've taken that on, and I've tried to cultivate it by doing the right things to not just be a manager, be a leader, because they're two different things.
You know what's interesting is that you're saying you want to be a leader, right? That's something
Mhm.
that you bought into. What do you think it is about you that's made you do that other than being the oldest? Because being a leader is not an easy task.
Mm.
That's not something I think everybody's running into saying, yes, I want to do it.
That's an interesting question. What made me want to do it? I think I would look, actually, I know. I remember looking at some leaders and thinking, I could do that, and I bet
Okay.
I'd do it better. And I also remember being so bold as to be foolish when I was just promoted to an interim head nurse. The chief nursing officer position came open. Why did I apply for it? I know that.
Understood. After now, the interesting thing is after being dropped literally into the ocean to drown, crying every day, you're like, oh, I'll take on more. Let me jump into that ocean too and drown some more. So you didn't really learn your lesson, huh?
No, no, I didn't. But that was like a big jump. I must have been, who knows what I was smoking? Because I was like, yes, I'm sure human resources picked up that application and went,
Like what she thinks she gonna do? Just jump over everybody and just go right to chief.
exactly. I mean, I think sometimes you can do that, but I sure couldn't. But that's, now I look back and say you must have been full of yourself. But I think I just had that I can do it because I'd see other people doing things, and I
Mhm,
think I can do it just as well. But,
mhm,
just knowing you want to be a leader and knowing you have leadership qualities by itself doesn't make you a leader. It makes you have like a good foundation, but there's
right.
some bad habits have to be broken, not
Mm,
broken like break somebody, but the way I used to like tell my sisters, you're gonna do what I said because I said it. Well, that doesn't work with leaders.
mm.
Mm-mm, no.
Very interesting. I wonder, shout out to everybody that's tuned in. We have some folks that's saying hello to us. Hi, Opal. Hi, Anthony. Appreciate everyone from iHeart, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. You know how we do, even Instagram. Thank y'all all for tuning in. I wonder how many siblings that are oldest naturally have gravitated to want to be a leader. I wonder how many people feel that way. Because I know I really didn't want it. I really didn't want to do it. I think often I still don't really want to be a leader, and I still end up in those positions. And I feel badly sometimes when I fall back and I'm like, oh, I could really do this, but I don't. Do I really want to put myself out there? Because
Hmm.
I feel a certain level of accountability that
Hmm.
once I sort of take initiative or raise my hand and volunteer, I now own it. And when it doesn't go a particular way, I own all of it. And it it's overwhelming when you do that because delegation, it works, but not everybody always falls through. So, if you are a leader, I feel like you're supposed to step in and pick up the slack and not let all the balls drop. I don't know how
Hmm.
you feel about that, but
You just hit, girl. You just hitting a whole bunch of my stuff, just all in my stuff.
I figured I might. Sometimes I play devil's advocate too, and I'm throwing out stuff that you might actually have a challenge for because I'm trying to pull some stuff out of you on this conversation, right? Because I know I'm not the only leader that says things
Mm-mm.
like that. So what
No,
do you say to a leader that feels that way?
well, that delegation and accountability is hard. So again, I thought if I say it must be done, it will be done. So in my mind, I was thinking that was delegation. What that was bossiness. That wasn't delegation at all.
Mm,
So delegation has several parts. So delegation says, I'm going to assign something to somebody, and then I have some steps to follow. So some of the steps I need to follow is so I come to you and I go, Coach Law, I have several projects that we're going to have to split up among us.
Mm-hmm.
I think this one will fit you. What do you think? And you go, Dr. Bonnie, I think that's a good idea. So we talk through it. So that's the first part, talking about, do you think you can do it? Are you even interested in it? Instead of just hand it, put it on your desk and say, peace out, peace be with you. Then we go through what are all the parts that are necessary for it. So we talk through, so you know the steps. I'm not just dropping it on your desk and running. Then we agree to a timeline. So we've already done a couple of steps. One is asking you if you want to do it. Number two is explaining the project. And then the third thing is let's come up with a due date. So you say, okay, I think I can get it done by July the 7th. Because I asked you, when do you think? You said July the 7th. I'm like, well, that sounds good. It's not really due till the 14th, but July the 7th works. Now, here's where we fall through the cracks. You say July the 7th. I walk away. I'm thinking that's all. That is not all. What I need to do is check in with you regularly.
Mm-hmm.
So checking in isn't just, so, hey, how you doing? Things going great? Because what are you going to say to me if I say that?
It's going good. I'm probably going to say, I got this.
Yep. Because you don't want me to know that you have no clue of what we're talking about. Oh, you picked all that stuff, you looked at it and don't know. So what I should say to you is, so it looks like you've been working on this for about a week or so. Let's talk about how things are going. Can you show me your progress? Who was it? Reagan that said trust but verify. So I need to.
Oh, I say receipts. Where's the receipts? Do
Yeah,
you feel like that's micromanaging though?
It's not micromanaging unless you show me everything you've been doing. And then I come back like the next day and go, can you show me everything? Can you show me everything?
Okay.
I'm making sure that what you said you understood,
Yes.
you really do.
Well, I'm glad a reason why I bring that up is that I think there's this fine line of people not realizing that when you need support, right, and you need guidance, people have to follow up, and follow up can feel like micromanagement to people who don't really want to be transparent or be held accountable.
Well, I think it's both.
Mhm.
So I had a person who was about to be a micromanager. I remember she told me she wanted a report every week of what I had been working on. And I did it like one or two times. And then I was like, this is stupid. I see her, I won't tell you her name, so she won't be able to take this back. But I would see her like every other week, and I'd check back in, and she's like, yeah, you're doing good. So at some point I was like, I stopped doing those reports. She said, yeah, it's fine, because you've been getting the information to me.
Right.
So, that's still that step of checking in. She didn't need to check like every jot and every tittle of what I did. So micromanaging, I think, is different than me checking with you on a regular basis.
That I have heard in terms of my clients, because I get a lot of high achieving clients. And when you're dealing with imposter syndrome, or you're feeling like you're not good enough, the idea of what we're talking about can feel very overwhelming and anxiety producing, to have to show your progress to a manager, especially if you're already struggling with being found out to be a fraud, right? So you don't want anybody to know what you don't know. How do you navigate that? And has that come up in any of your dialogues? Like, people who are dealing with this, or is that just what they tell their therapists?
No, no, because as a coach and as a leader, sometimes it feels like it's slipping over into that therapy part. But I often tell people this is not therapy. I am not a licensed independent practitioner. That aside, it does sometimes slip over where people are like, well, I don't want to show you because you might see that I don't know what I'm doing. I remember somebody in Texas that was so afraid she was going to get fired. I'm like, I'm sure you're doing a great job. If you don't show me, I can't help you.
Right.
So I think you have to be able to reassure the person that you're there to support them. You're not there to pull them apart and beat them up. That's not what I'm there. If I beat you up, then who's going to do the work?
It's funny because I deal also with a lot of what we call cognitive distortions, and also cognitive dissonance. So cognitive distortions are just faulty thinking. So a lot of times people are so in their head, they create a whole story, a whole narrative of what's happening, that they're already so wound up and so overwhelmed, and some of it is not necessarily factual. So
Mm-hmm.
I think coaching helps. I
Mm-hmm.
also think therapy helps because
Mm-hmm.
it gives you a sounding board to challenge some of these perspectives
Mm-hmm.
in terms of it's okay to make mistakes. There's so many people that are so afraid of making a mistake or failing because I kind of blame, corporations and managers and supervisors for this too. They don't often handle it well. They don't
Mm-hmm.
give a lot of space for it. You get written up, you get on work plans. You, People do get fired for it too. So I hear you. It sounds good in theory, but in real time, real practice, how do we help people who that's their reality, especially when you start adding in microaggressions and racism and
Mm-hmm.
discrimination and all those type of things? How do you get how do you how do you be transparent with your manager about what you don't know?
I think you have to really listen. Just like probably one of the biggest parts of your job as a therapist is listening. So it's listening to what I see and what I don't see, and what I hear and what I don't hear. I had
Mhm.
an amazing leader in Texas, and she just kept saying, "Bonnie, I'm afraid you're going to fire me. I'm afraid I'm going to mess up. I just think I'm going to get fired." And I'm like, "Where are you getting this from?" Well, I was kind of told that before, that we needed to do a good job. I said, "Okay, so let's talk about this. Are you going to mess up? Yep. You're going to make some mistakes. You sure are. Am I going to fire you? Nope. Not going to happen. Not unless you kill somebody or you do something totally egregious." I
Mhm.
love that word.
Yeah,
And then we
preach.
kind of work through egregious. Yeah.
Yes.
And I ask my clients, they go, "Well, I'm so afraid. I'm so afraid if I do this wrong, something awful is going to happen." So I walk through the same thing. Okay, let's talk about. Do you think you'll get fired? Well, no. Do you think the company is going to go bankrupt and like just die? No. Do you think like your boss's boss will get fired? Well, no. I said, so what's the worst thing? You
Mhm.
made a mistake. You admit to your mistake, then you try to figure out to do it better. Because I've made some $200,000 ones in the past. And I just admitted what I did wrong, and we had to fix it. Now, did I get in trouble? Yes, I did. But it's better just to admit it and get some help than to just sit on it and go, "No, I'm so afraid what's going to happen." And I was a black woman in an all white organization.
Mhm.
So, yes, I'm not knocking that there's not microaggressions. Microaggressions, I'm not saying there's not racism, but that was the way I chose to handle it, because what's the worst that could happen? They could fire me. I have been fired before, but I still ended up with another job.
I think the idea, and one of the posts I saw on your page was about dealing with rejection,
Hmm.
and being fired is being rejected in a lot of ways. It's being told you weren't good enough. There's a lot that goes, you messed up, that does not feel good. And sometimes, people struggle with bouncing back from that and having the resilience. And so that can be really scary if you've lost a job before and it took
Hmm.
a long time to get another one. So I do think we talk about a lot of things on this show, and I think also in coaching, and we make it sound easy, right? We make it sound like, oh, you just, manage up, come to your manager and lay these things out, and you can, navigate through it. But it's not always that simple. I mean, there are some real things that people are dealing with, which brings me to what therapy means to you, because I think as an executive coach and knowing your own personal story, I'm
Hmm.
curious of how you've interweaved therapy both into your personal life and into your professional life.
Well, that's funny you say that, because I believe therapy is a gift. And I believe it's a gift we give ourselves. And I'm not just saying this for people on or whatever. I've had therapy more times than I can tell you. Now, I've had some people go, "Well, what are you, just crazy? Is that why you get therapy?" Well, yes, I am, but the therapy didn't help that. I believe it's that, like,
She just threw that in there, y'all. Don't just Dr. Bonnie. Don't you just done it. Yep, I'm crazy, but that ain't why I went to therapy.
that's not why. Those are two separate things: the crazy and the going to therapy. Because, okay, so here's the thing. With therapy, as with coaching, you're that confidential person I can come and talk to. It
Mhm.
doesn't go outside your office or anything. And I can tell you, when I got fired, for something I didn't feel like I had done, where I get there at 7 and by 9 o'clock I'm being escorted out the door. Did I go to therapy afterwards? Did I feel like I had some imposter syndrome? For sure. But therapy got me to where I am now. Therapy got me to the place where I looked and said, you know what? I didn't deserve that. It is what it is. There's nothing I can do about it. I can say it's racism. I can say all these things that I want. The reality is now I have no job. So
Hmm.
what am I going to do? And I decided to take what I had and start a business. But I'm not saying everybody can do that. I had a very supportive husband.
Hmm.
I just think therapy, I've had therapy for a variety of reasons,
Hmm.
for depression, for divorce, for kids, and just because things are so overwhelming at work.
Hmm.
It's a wonderful gift. And I also think what therapy gives you is tools to be able to function differently later. It's
Yes.
just just that, well, have you thought of doing this things this way? Have you thought of trying this?
And I think, I really strongly encourage people to have community and have a support system. But in the absence of that, finding a good fit therapist that's an active listener who also is modeling not knowing everything and giving you, well, this is what I've seen in the past. This is
Mhm.
what I've experienced. This is what has helped some of my clients, or this is what research says. What do you think about that? And just giving you the opportunity to sort of really start to dig into your thinking patterns. And I think when we talk about leadership, the key thing is you have to be a decision maker, right? You have to be able to look at various perspectives, various stimuli, and take all of this stuff in and come up with a solution. And it
Mhm.
can't be just on intuition and feelings. So you also have to be able to do a lot of data collecting. And I
Yep.
think that's one of the things for all leaders of going to therapy. It allows you to synthesize data and information because it can get real overwhelming and cloudy. And a
Mhm.
lot of these really large corporation systems, there's so much coming at you so fast. It's like, who do I trust? So I
Right.
think that's one of the key things too, is that your therapist is like almost like your mental health attorney because it's
Right.
like attorney client privilege. Your therapist got privileges to know things that nobody else is gonna know.
I had a therapist that I went to, and one of the um, key leader notes that they used to say at my job was, one of your competencies was dealing with ambiguity. And I told her, I said,
Hey,
that's one of
tell me
the,
about that. What does that mean?
that's what I said. What does that mean? You know what she said to me? You have too much ambiguity going on right now. I mean, what? Because I had like multiple departments.
Right. It's like I call that the blind spots, right? I call
Right.
that the unknown. And I think as a leader, there's a certain amount that you're living in the unknown. You have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable
Well,
because
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
you can micromanage people all day long, delegate all day long, and there's still a good likelihood that there's something you don't know or
Hmm.
something that's not being told to you. That's overwhelming in itself,
Hmm.
right? Like
Hmm.
sometimes you're on a need to know basis. There's just too many blind spots. And being in that space, a lot of people can criticize leadership when you're on the outside looking in. But once you're up there, you can't see everything anymore because you're not in the midst. You get far, you get removed. I remember when I did move up, it was like you were no longer with the frontline staff, which is where all the juice happened. Once you were once you moved up the chain of command, there was a lot of stuff you didn't know unless you had somebody that was feeding
Hmm.
the truth of what was
Hmm.
happening because people was doing whatever they wanted to do.
So
So
I had a leader that used to ask the best question. She in her staff meeting, she said, "So tell me the juice. What's the latest rumor that I can clear up for you all?" And so people would like tell her stuff. But there is a certain time, I think, when you have too many blind spots, too many
yes,
balls that you're what's this juggling.
you're juggling too many balls. Yes.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's what she said. You have too much ambiguity going on. And I wouldn't have figured some of that out without counseling, without therapy, where she was able to clarify it for me that I need to put some things to the side. I needed to go on vacation.
Mm,
I need to like Take a
Needed
week.
to rest. You need some
Mhm.
rest. I think that a lot of times we feel like I have a client I was working with who just literally is working all the time because of the
Mhm.
blind spots. Also not wanting to be the person in the room who doesn't know. So she's trying to be 10 and 15 steps ahead of everybody. So she's burning herself out. She's burning on both ends. Um, how do you think, or what do you think the role of executive coaching is, and how do people benefit from it?
I have some clients just like you said. They said I have to. I can think of one in particular, but they said I have to do everything. I just have to. I have to get it all done. If I don't get it done, it's never going to happen. And there's a couple of places we start. So I start with values. I have you come up with your values and you prioritize them.
Mhm.
And then where the role of coaching comes in is after you prioritize them, then we start into where's the biggest area for you. So it sounds like one of the things where that person is feeling like they have to do everything, they probably don't delegate very well. And if they do delegate, they're either thinking, I'm not going to delegate it because I can do it better than everybody else, or I'm not going to delegate because I'm afraid it won't get done, which means you're not holding people accountable and you're not having those conversations
Mm.
of doing the delegation. And then I asked them, I have a question. When you feel like you have to do everything and you're working from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and not having dinner with your kids, I have a question. What happens if you go home tonight and you get sick and you have to take FMLA for 16 weeks? Do you think they're going to look and say, oh my God, Bonnie got sick, we're going to have to stop the presses? No, they'll find somebody else to do the job. And if you die or if you're on your deathbed, people do not look over. Your kids are not going to look at you in that bed and say, I am so glad that Bonnie got those reports in. They won't care. They
Mhm.
want to know that their mom, that their grandma, their nana, their wife has done some things for them, has
Mhm.
been there for them. So the reason I tell people to what are your values and then prioritize them, because mine that I've had to come to over time is God, my health, my family, and then work.
Mm.
And if I'm busy doing so much work that I can't spend time with my family or that let my health suffer, something's got to go.
Right.
We got to rearrange some things here. So that's how you can benefit from a coach, because a coach, you're walking like this straightforward and you've seen that sign, that thing that says putting on your own oxygen mask first, or you
Yes,
you can't read the label from the inside. Many
that's
times
right.
people can't see that. So I'm here as your coach to help you learn what's on the outside of that label, and then let's prioritize this, or as a nurse, let's triage this and figure out what we're going to do first based on your values.
I think it's so valuable to have an executive coach and a therapist.
Hmm.
You can have them both, or you can have one or the other. But I think even some of the best athletes, um, entrepreneurs, business owners have a coach. And I
Hmm.
think what it is that you need a sounding board.
Hmm.
um you need somebody who is on the outside that can sort of have the eagle's eye view of everything that you can't see. That person often sometimes sees the blind spots that you can't see because you're in the middle and you're playing, and while you're playing you're not seeing everything, so they can come back and say, hey, here's a strategy, here's a play that maybe you haven't played yet that might help you navigate this a little bit better. I think sometimes people feel like if they tap into coaching or even therapy, that they're not good enough, or um asking for help makes them weak.
Right.
You think about that.
I think one thing big, if your coach doesn't have a coach, fire them.
Did she say that, y'all? If your coach doesn't have a coach, fire him.
That's
Now
right.
tell me, why do you believe that?
Because why am I trying to sell you on something or to tell you this is something good for you if I can't do it myself? When you go in the hair salon, don't you look and see the person that you're going to pick out what their hair looks like? Then why would I do so? I know, right? Why would I do something different with other things?
Well, I think that there's a lot of value in that. And I've had two schools of thought. One school of thought is, why would I want to go to a therapist or a coach that needs a coach? Because how are you going to help me if you need help? That was one thing I heard somebody say.
Okay.
And then I've heard the other side of it, which is like you just said, I actually love that my therapist has a therapist or a coach, because that means that they're actively and always holding their self accountable,
Yep.
and also making sure that they have somebody that's helping them stay grounded, which
Mm-hmm.
means that their cup is getting full. I
Right.
mean, I like to keep my cup in a place of overflow. Like, I don't even
Mhm.
want it to be full. I want it to be flowing over. Because then if I'm giving to people, I'm not really giving much from my cup, because my cup is just runneth over.
Mhm.
So I feel like that's how I look at therapy and coaching. It keeps your faucet on. Like,
Right.
you just got a running faucet, and you're
Mhm.
just getting fed into all the time. So it's unlikely that the stresses of the world are going to deplete you, because you're always pouring and feeding yourself.
Well, all doctors have a doctor.
Talk about it.
This was always amazing to me. Chiropractors, I don't know if you ever been to a chiropractor. They will say, "Yeah, I have to go get my own adjustments," and I go to this chiropractor because I know they're really good.
Mm,
Because the thing that you're trying to teach others is also a thing that you're dealing with, meaning the people that you are trying to work with are where you were before. So they want to get to where you are now. So if
right.
I don't have a coach to now take me to the next step, how am I going to take anybody else to that next step? You can tell I'm all like into this because my hands are really going.
Right. We just got a really good question. I hope I'm saying your name right. Kashana, I think it is. She said, why does having a coach feel like trying to access progression, and a therapist feels like there's something wrong with the person? Is there a difference? And I think that's a great question, because I think often with therapy or having a therapist, people think that you have to be crazy, or
Mm,
that you have to have something going on. But I feel like a lot of people who access therapy, they're also trying to make sure that they have the coping strategies to deal with a stressful situation versus being burnt out. They're trying to get ahead of it. Not everybody it's in like a complete crisis when they come to therapy. A lot
mhm,
of people in maintenance, they just need a sounding board. I think for me, as a licensed independent clinical social worker and an executive coach, which is one of my I guess my value adds, I would say, or what's different about working with me, is that you get both. So I can do, treatment and talk about trauma and depression and anxiety, but I also do a lot of what Dr. Bonnie does too. So we both I
mm,
combine it, because what I originally was a coach first. And I realized that a lot of people were really stuck in a lot of past hurts and pains that was holding them back. And it wasn't just strategies on how to manage their goals, their dreams,
mhm,
their progression in life. That was one thing. But then it was also, I got an internal narrative that I'm not good enough.
mhm,
I got an internal narrative that I'm not going to make it. I have an internal narrative that I'm an imposter, or I'm struggling with imposter phenomena. Um, I'm constantly crying and overwhelmed. I'm not in a healthy relationship. So they got other stuff that,
mhm,
on top of all of the strategy stuff we're talking about, they also had that going on simultaneously. I find once people get an opportunity to sort of work through dysfunctional learned behaviors, childhood trauma,
mhm,
they then are ready for coaching. And then we can kind of get back to the present day.
mhm,
Because often present day is like, I don't really want to talk about the past. But then as we meet more and more, you realize they're triggered, they don't have a good relationship with their mother, or
mhm,
they never really had their dad in their life. So this stuff starts coming up, and you start to see that some of that is connected to
mhm,
them not wanting to move forward, or why they're stuck, is that they have this narrative in their head that they're not good enough. Um, they weren't really validated or supported as a child. Their attachment style causes them to be anxious. They don't really deal well with failure, making
mhm,
mistakes. So you go, why? How does that even happen? How does that occur? And I think when you're talking, you had parents that really encouraged you to be. It was okay to make a mistake,
mhm,
but not everybody has had parents like that. And that's what I'm starting to see as a trend on my show, is that a lot of the leaders that are doing well and are high functioning, although they have a therapist, they already had a really good support system. And
Mhm.
that's why they knew something was off and why they sought therapy.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm sitting thinking, was it okay to make a mistake in our house? Maybe, maybe not. But I figured out kind of on my own that it was a good thing to get therapy as I was going through some relationship stuff. And I'll never forget taking one of our kids to therapy after a separation, almost divorce. And the man talked to my child and came out and said, he's one of the healthiest teenagers I've never ever met. So I think I was always in that mindset of something traumatic just happened. Let's be on the upside of it and go get checked. But
Mhm.
many of I mean, I can think of like seven right now of my clients will say, well, I was talking to my therapist yesterday and here's what they said. So you're right, they have a therapist and a coach. And there's sometimes when I say, have you thought about having a therapist? Because when you start going down that road of, when my mother this and when my dad this, and, as a child, if it's something that it seems like they've worked their way through, then I can continue and keep them going forward. If it's something that's holding them back from the past, I'm not your woman. I need to send them to you and
Mhm.
we can work with them together. But I know when I've overstepped the line.
I think that is usually the line, right? Is when a lot of what happens is in therapy is that they're telling you about stuff from the past.
Hmm.
And it creates an emotional response. That's usually, I feel like I look at therapy like a massage, right? If you've ever had a massage and you start getting the massage and the person asks you how much pressure you can have, and you might say medium deep pressure, and then they hit a particular spot that you didn't even know was bothering you. And I feel like often coaching sometimes is the gateway to
Hmm.
finding those spots that you didn't even know bothered you, because now you're talking to the coach and you're not getting things done. You get this task list and the next week you come back and the coach says, so how did everything go? And you're like, I didn't get it done. You're like, okay, let's talk about why you didn't get it done. I don't really know. I just didn't have the motivation. I procrastinated, or I'm always my family asked me to do this and I put it aside. And you're like, but you got to prioritize it. You said you valued this. You said this was important to you.
Hmm.
You start finding out they have a hard time telling people no. And there's some people pleasing stuff going in there. And you're like, okay, but you're not going to get this done if you don't say no. If you
Hmm.
don't start having these hard conversations, and then you find out they struggle with the hard conversations.
Yep. And there's some where I can help them work through the hard conversations because it's something they want to go forward with. But if it's something that's sitting back there that, I used to get spanked every time my parents had to have a hard conversation with me. I used to have this and that. That's something I can't help you. I can't necessarily help you to move forward with. And so that's when I often say, okay, let's talk about who you can go find as a good counselor. Here's some resources
Right.
because much of the work that I do is really moving leaders who are already doing great jobs from where they are to the point of where they want to be promoted. But
Mhm.
if you have some stuff literally that's just in there holding you back, we're going to have to put some extra resources in there. And many times that extra resource is you probably need some counseling. And I'm happy to say it because I encourage people to do it.
So I think speaking back to the question was, is coaching progressing and therapy is not? And I would say I think they both are about progression.
Hmm.
I don't think you going to therapy means that you don't want to progress, because I think ultimately if you're willing to do that deep work, that inner child work, that shadow work, talk about past traumatic experiences and come to some kind of resolution, that's progression. So I think they both allow you to progress, but in different ways, right? One is a deep emotional deep dive, and the other one
Hmm.
I think is more of a present day task oriented, um, strategic plan to hit a goal and to see how to hit the goal and how to move forward. And not everybody knows how to do that. Not everybody. Well, you know what? I don't want to say that. I think it's still good to have checkpoints and accountability and an accountability partner. And I feel
Mhm.
like often your coach is like an accountability partner because you already kind of know what you want to do. You got it in your head. You've been saying you want to start this business, and you get with a coach, and it's like, all right, what business do you want to start? What do you think you need to do next? What do you think you need to do after that? Okay, what resources do you need? What resources don't you have? Okay, let's look at those resources. Let's
Mhm.
put this together. Okay, next week, what you're gonna go down to the business office in your city, get your business certificate. You're gonna get your tax ID number. You're gonna open up a bank account, and we're gonna check in and see how that went. So it's like boom, boom, boom. It's like moving you forward. And it gets you fired up too and energized because you got somebody to go back and talk about the win. Because your
Yep.
coach is cheering you on too. When you come back and you did that, it's like high five. Good job. Now what's next? Like let's go.
Yeah, I tell people that I am your confidential thought partner and your accountability buddy. I'm
Accountability
your
buddy.
accountability buddy. And now one of my neighbors years ago made it up, but I've snatched it.
Accountability
I-
buddy.
that's right. I'm your person that's here. It's not like things of the past we're not going to talk about, but
Mhm.
what we're trying to do is go forward. So as a coach, if you're trying to, for example, to get promoted, one of the things I talk about is okay, let's talk about where you've been. Let's talk about what you already did. So you said you tried to get promoted before and it didn't work. Okay, let's talk about what it's going to be in a year if you do get promoted and you do this work.
Mhm.
Let's talk about what it's been in the past. What did that look like? Oh, you tried
Right.
this and this and this. So we've talked about where you've been. We've talked about where you're going. Then we start talking about, so are you really, what are you willing to put in the work?
Mhm.
So there's time, effort, and money, an investment. So can you take the time? Are you willing to put in the effort? Are you willing to make an investment? Because if you're ready to do all these things and you've already told me what you've done that didn't work
Right.
and what it's going to look like when it does work, then we are ready to work together. But again, that's going forward. And if they have a therapist, that's great. We're going to
Yeah,
both
and
work.
you
We're going to
make
work
you
on
make
stuff.
Dr. Bonnie's job a lot easier if you come and you've already done some of this back work with a therapist.
Hmm.
So can you believe it? We got like 8 minutes left to the show.
What?
I know, I told you. And we've been talking too. I've been getting you talking. I like it, Dr. Bonnie. I love when I get a talker. But before we end the show, I want to leave some time just to talk about your bet on self moment, right? And I'm going to tie that into the event I'm going to meet you at face to face in July.
Hmm.
So, a bet on self moment, like we've talked about in the past on this show, is all about having this epiphany of, if not now, then when? If not me, then who? Right?
Hmm.
And you have had a lot of things going on in your world. And today I got you more talking about your coaching business. But what has your bet on self moments where you was like, listen, I got a bet on Dr. Bonnie?
There were probably three, but the last one is what pushed me over. So the first one was having a seizure on a plane, finding out I had a tumor. It got infected. And so I had to go back for a second surgery. And then I had a third surgery to put a metal plate in my head. So that was the first one that made me realize I needed to focus. Then part B of that was having a seizure like 3 years later, sitting at a stoplight with my foot firmly planted on the brake for two reasons. There was scar tissue from the previous surgeries, and I wasn't getting enough sleep. Did you know you could have a seizure from not getting enough sleep? I
No,
didn't.
we didn't found out today.
Yep, you
Or
not getting enough
tonight.
sleep. So, that really made me start putting my health first. Then the next big time was last July, when on July the 3rd at 10:45 in the morning, I found out I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it really made me stop again and say, what is important? What am I going to focus on? And I'm cancer free now. I had the chemotherapy for 16 sessions. I'm sorry, 13 weeks, and radiation for 16 daily sessions. But again, I had to focus back on my health. So there was sometimes I didn't coach. Sometimes I didn't want to talk to the family, didn't cook, because I had to focus back on me. Now I'm
Mhm.
going to go back one time before the cancer. When I was let go from my job, I was crushed. And when I called my husband crying on the phone about I just got fired, he said, first thing, I can't hear you because you're snotting all over the place, but pull over. And then one thing he said that was so eye opening, he said, you've been talking about coaching for years. I think we found out it was since 2018. Now you have the opportunity to do it. And honestly, I've tried several times to go back and get a nursing leadership job. And what I found is this is my calling. I love doing it. I love watching people grow. I love seeing them be promoted in less time than they could do without a coach. I just, sometimes you wake up in
Fires
the
you up.
morning.
It fires you up.
It does. I used to
Fires
wake up in
you
the
up.
morning sometimes and I'd go, oh my God, I got another meeting. Now I wake up and I'm like, oh, woo, I get to coach.
Yes, I was so tired. I just hosted an event. Shout out to Vic Breedy, 10-year anniversary. And she is an author here in Boston, and she wrote a book called Bitter, and it's like a whole series. And then she started a Selfish Women's Group, and then she created a apparel brand. So we were celebrating her today. So I did that event, and then I had to do the show. And like since I've been talking to you, I haven't thought about being tired. Like I'm like all the way in, and I'm sure I'm like just a second ago, I'm so tired, but I'm so fired up and energized. So clearly, this whole radio thing, talking to people, is my thing. It's my thing. It's my thing. What can I say? I like to talk to folks. I like to run my mouth. I've always loved to run my mouth. But Dr. Bonnie, this has been awesome. Now we are going to be doing an event together in July.
Yep.
That event is going to be here at UMass Boston, my alma mater. I'm so excited about this event, and we're going to get a chance to meet each other in person. This is being put together by JLW Management, medical management consultant, and it's called Breaking Barriers. And it's a business shower for mental health professionals, and it's going down on July 19th, my birthday month. You guys need to make sure you're in the building. You can get the tickets on Eventbrite. And I want to see you there. I want you to be able to meet Dr. Bonnie. If you're looking for an executive coach, here's your opportunity. If you need a therapist, I'm currently taking new clients. You can find Dr. Bonnie on Instagram. You can also find me on Instagram, therapist_coach LA. Dr. Bonnie, where can they find you?
On LinkedIn, on Dr. Bonnie Wilson, I'm on there. And you can also go to www.exceedingthemark, starts with an X, XCEEDING, themark.com. I'd be happy to sit down and work with you. And I want you to be one of those people that I'm leaping out of bed for, because I do love what I do. And my clients are really good at it. So yeah.
And listen, you can get both of us. If you're in Boston, I can be your therapist, and you can tap into Dr. Bonnie. We can tag team you, but get you a support system in the network. Start with your values. I think that's the biggest thing we said today is, what are your values? Prioritize that. And if you are stuck with some stuff in the past, that's okay. It's all about progression. It's all about growing, evolving. And as I always say, betting on yourself. And betting on yourself makes you a better person. If you're a better person, you can do more and be better to the people around you if you're taking care of you. And I think that that's what you're saying in terms of your health. We got to take care of ourselves. And that's also part of betting on ourselves too. Any final words, Dr. Bonnie?
No, I'm just excited that some of the people that's listening are going to be some of those that I'll be coaching soon. And I'm also excited about a friend I have in Boston right now. She's in the hospital, but I know I'll get to see her soon. I'll get to see her when it's there. And she's one of my favoritist clients. So excited to see her soon.
Shout out to everybody that's been listening. You've been tuned into the Urban Heat 98.1 FM, the only Black station on iHeartRadio in Boston. Shout out to DJ Wade, Anthony, Kashana, Evadista. Thank you for tuning, Miss Opal. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Make sure y'all listen tomorrow to the Morning Cafe right here on the Urban Heat 98.1 FM. Dr. Bonnie, you are amazing. Thank you so much for being here with me tonight. And y'all know next week we'll have a whole nother conversation. It's always going to be a good time. And life is good. Feeling real good today. This was a great conversation. So thank you so much for tuning in to another conversation with your favorite Around the Way therapist. Yeah.
Go get that vacation.
You know, I'm gonna plan it. I think I'm gonna do a trip to Jamaica. I've been really thinking about it. So
I'll be your accountability buddy. I'll check with you in about a week to see if it's scheduled. Bye.
yes. Bye, everybody.
Orthodox
Good
Radio
night.
from Boston and beyond. Heat981fm.com and iHeart Station.
Good night.